What is going on, everybody? Welcome back, and in today's video we are going to be going over my top 15 linebackers entering the 2025 college football season, as we are doing my preseason rankings for the 2026 NFL draft. Now, unfortunately, I was not able to be joined by the Draft Hub today. Our schedules just didn't line up for this episode, but we will be back next week continuing our series together. But today we're going to be going through my top 15 list, and right off the bat, this linebacker class is a really deep group. I studied, I want to say, close to 40 different linebackers, and there are a lot of guys that just barely missed this list that I'm excited to touch on a little bit at the end of the video. But if you guys are new to the channel, consider hitting that like and subscribe button. We are about to start ramping up the content, as we will be doing my different conference predictions for the Big 12, ACC, Big 10, and SEC. Those will be coming soon. Got a few one-off videos that I'm really excited to throw out there as well. And then obviously the positional ranking. So leave a like, ring the notification bell so you never miss out on a video. But I don't want to waste another second, guys. Let's go ahead, get into it. Starting off with my number 15 linebacker, that is going to be Amari Campbell, formerly of North Carolina, now at Penn State. 6'1", 230 pounds. Really interesting player. There were moments last year, if you were watching North Carolina, which I apologize if you did, he made some really impressive plays. I think he's a powerful linebacker that takes on blocks really well. He's got good power in his game. I thought he showed good range and coverage. He can blitz a little bit downhill. I really like his tackling, though. I think he was one of the more reliable tacklers that I watched. A 9.6% missed tackle rate, which if you're under 10 as a linebacker, really impressive. He had 37 run stops. He forced a fumble last season. He is a guy that is going to be more of that traditional downhill linebacker, because I don't think he is, while he shows some moments in coverage that are overall solid, he's not the biggest guy in the world in terms of his length. And I didn't think he was the greatest athlete. I didn't think he had a great range. I thought he was more of a, read and react type of guy rather than go out and make a play. And as weird as it is, for a guy that I think takes on blocks well, he plays with power in his game. When he tackles, he feels borderline soft at times. It feels like he is not really bringing the boom, if you will. And I think that's going to change at Penn State. I'm hoping it changes. Was a late addition to Penn State, enters via the spring portal. And I'm interested to see what he can do. I think he's got some really interesting moments. Would like to see a little bit more consistency in terms of his hit power, but 84.1 pass rush grade. He's a guy that I think could get after the quarterback, could be that downhill presence. So I've got Campbell at 15, and I think he's going to be a really interesting name to monitor. At number 14, a guy that I loved last year, and I am going to continue to pound the table for, and that's going to be new Oklahoma State linebacker Brian McCoy. I loved this guy last year. Had he come out, I don't think anyone was really talking about him because, well, he played for Akron last year. And Akron, unfortunately, not the greatest program in the world for developing talent. He goes to Oklahoma State, and I think he can immediately fill that Nick Martin role, that Colin Oliver role. Both the guys that were drafted to the NFL last year, he is just a really good football player. Now, it's not going to necessarily show up when you're popping on the PFF grades. He had a 66.7 defense grade, 58.2 in terms of his tackling, ended up having a 15.9% missed tackle rate. But he does so many little things throughout the game that I think are really intriguing for me. I think his tackling, while it was a 15% this year, he only had a 9% missed tackle rate the year prior, which I thought he was really good in. He's 6'2", 225, but he looks bigger than that. He's got long arms. The thing that I love most about McCoy, however, is his ability to come downhill and stuff the run. He is a phenomenal run stuffer. He understands run concepts. He penetrates gaps really well. He doesn't bite on counters, and he crashes downhill. I think he's really good at taking on blockers. He's got good power. He's strong. I love that about him. The reason I have him at 14 and not a little bit higher, he's just not a good athlete, and I think it does come back to hurt him at times, particularly in coverage. He doesn't have great change of direction. I felt like he did struggle to stick on guys and one-on-one. And if the great athleticism or the lack of athleticism is showing on the MAC, I'm curious how it's going to look at the Power 4 level. Oklahoma State, a team that doesn't have a ton of expectations, but I think Brian McCoy, a really good linebacker that's not getting enough buzz, I think he's going to have a really good year for this team. They had two linebackers drafted last year. I think they're going to have another one drafted next year, and McCoy is going to be that guy. If you could see a little bit more from him in coverage, see that long speed and change of direction improve a little bit, which it can happen, I think McCoy could be a top 10 linebacker in this draft. At number 13 on my list, I've got Wade Woodaz. I know this is going to be low for some people. I think a lot of people are going to be upset with my number 13 and number 12 picks. Woodaz is a good overall linebacker. I've got a 3rd to a 4th round grade on him, which should tell you about as good as I think this linebacker class is. He's been a productive player for Clemson at a 74.5 defense grade this past season per PFF. 6'3", 235, the biggest linebacker we've talked about, and I think he makes a lot of really good plays. He's a smart linebacker. He uses his head really well, showcases good coverage feel. He is a smart, heady player. He reminds me maybe of like a Josie Jewell or someone in that realm where he's a good linebacker. I just don't know that he's great. Takes some good angles as a run defender. He can blitz a little bit. He showed versatility to play all over, but one, he missed a lot of tackles, nearly a 17% missed tackle rate this past season. I think that number is going to have to improve for Clemson. I don't think he's a great block shedder. Unfortunately, I just thought there were a lot of times where if a defender was able to get his hands on him, he just didn't have the play strength to disengage at a super high level. And I don't think he's a great athlete. He's great at a straight line mover, but if he's asked to, change direction or move up field a little bit, I just don't think he has elite athleticism. And so I've got him at number 13. A guy that I think is going to make it in the league as a really smart, maybe strong side linebacker, maybe in a Sam role, but I just don't know if he has the athleticism or if he has the play strength to consistently be a number 1 linebacker at the next level. So I've got him at number 13. And at number 12, I think it's going to be really unpopular to a lot of people. I've got Whit Weeks at number 12. Now, Whit Weeks was phenomenal last season for LSU. There's no doubt about it. Was one of the higher graded linebackers that we will talk about in today's video. 71.7 defense grade. There's a lot to like about him. I love, and we're about to use the white guy cliche here, his motor and his just effort that he plays with on every play is going to get him drafted. I don't know that he'll be a super high draft pick, another guy that I've gotten that 3rd to 4th round range. Whit Weeks, he cares, and it shows on every single snap. This guy is consistently in pursuit of the ball carrier. He doesn't give up on plays, and I love that mentality that he plays with. You want to see that from linebackers. I want to get after the quarterback. I want to hit you, and I think Weeks has that. I think he's a really smart player. I loved what he showed in coverage. I thought he had good range. I thought that he picked up underneath routes really, really well. I thought he defended the run pretty well. He was a pretty productive tackler. I mean, this is a guy that seemingly was in every pile last season for LSU's defense. 82 tackles this past season and a 12.9% missed tackle rate. Maybe you'd like to see that number get a little bit lower, but I think it got better as the year went on. Because he plays with such a high motor and so aggressive, he's constantly go, go, go. I do think it does come back to hurt him, particularly in run defense. So many times he is coming downhill, trying to make a stop, and he just overextends and misses the tackle altogether. I also think he's a little bit on the lighter side. He's 6'2", 225 pounds. I want to see him bulk up because I did think there were times where his hit power was lacking and his ability to shed blockers wasn't necessarily there. I wanted to see a little bit more in terms of finesse and getting off of blocks, and I just didn't see that at a really high level from Weeks. And I just thought that he bit way too much on play action because he plays with such an aggressive style. If there's a little bit of movement, he is going that way. There were a lot of blown coverage assignments there for those same reasons. there's a lot to like. I like the way he plays. I think he's a good athlete. I think he's got the ideal length. I think he's a smart player with good coverage feel. But there are a lot of little things here that I just didn't love about his game. And that's why I have him at number 12. I know that's going to be probably one of my hotter takes of the video. I know he's in a lot of top 10s, but just didn't see a lot of down-to-down consistency from Weeks. And so I've got him at number 12. At number 11, one of the most pleasant watches of the entire episode was Pitt linebacker Kyle Lewis. I got the list from Draft Hub because we were initially planning on doing this video together, and this was one of his honorable mentions, spoiler alert. And I went in looking at both the Pitt linebackers. His teammate Rasheem Biles ultimately did not end up making the list. And I looked at the measurements. I was like, 6 foot, 225 pounds. He's undersized, but let's go into it. And for an undersized linebacker, he showed you about everything that you wanted to see. That I think he is a really good linebacker. I've got a 3rd round grade on him. One of the highest graded linebackers in the country last year. He had an 83.4 grade, which was a fantastic number. That is 5th and 3rd amongst all players we'll talk about in today's video. He's just an exceptional athlete, and you want to see that from 225-pound linebackers, but this is a guy that he moves so well. His downhill speed, and when they used him as a blitzer, he's one of the most reliable blitzing threats from the linebacker position that you're going to get. He had 7 sacks and 32 pressures last season. That is a ridiculous number. To put that into perspective, Jalen Walker, who was listed as a linebacker, had 34 pressures and 7 sacks. So this is a guy that was getting after the quarterback. He showed excellent bend around the edge, but I thought that he moved so incredibly well in coverage. That was the area where I was like, whoa, this guy might be something that we haven't seen in a minute, because yes, he's undersized, but his change of direction, his ability to pivot and turn his hips is next to none in this class. I think he is the best change of direction in this draft class. He's also a really good tackler, a guy that just didn't miss a lot of tackles last season. 11.8%, that's right at the threshold that you'd like to see. But overall, I thought he made a lot of good plays. Because of the lack of size, however, I do think it hurts his play strength. His run defense was very up and down because he struggled to shed blocks on a down-to-down basis. There were a lot of times where he just wasn't able to disconnect with blockers, and you'd like to see that improve. But for an undersized linebacker with question marks all around, Kyle Lewis is every bit as good as you would want to see from somebody of his size. I think he's got the opportunity to be drafted really high. I don't know if he's going to be a top 100 guy. I would draft him there, at least based off my early evaluations. But I love the athleticism. I love the ability to drop into coverage, and I think he does a lot of really smart things. So I've got Kyle Lewis at number 12, or at number 11, excuse me. I'd love to have him higher, but he just misses out on the top 10. Entering the top 10, this is a great class, like I mentioned in the intro. But at number 10, I've got Bryce Bocek. Really interesting story. A guy that initially was a baseball player, got drafted by the Houston Astros in like the 13th round, I want to say. Ended up going back to Oregon to pursue football, and I think he made the right choice. 6'2", 225, a lot of linebackers in that same range. Whit Weeks has the same exact size. I agree that I hold true to the statement that I think Bocek probably needs to add mass on at the next level because he is really light. But man, one of the most impressive linebacker seasons last season. The athleticism, again, really, really impressive. Sideline to sideline speed, change of direction, similarly to Kyle Lewis, is elite. I think he's just got really smart eyes in coverage. He bites, or he doesn't bite often. He reads plays really well. He had a 84.4 coverage grade. That is the highest of any of the linebackers that we will talk about in today's video. He can cover. He can play against tight ends. He can play against running backs out of the backfield. This is a guy that was really productive. Only allowed 223 yards in coverage. That's a really, really good number for a linebacker. He can blitz. He hits with a bunch of hit power. He's got good range, good feel. I love this guy. I thought he could have been one of the 5 or 6 best linebackers in last year's draft class. He does still Similarly to Lewis and Weeks, he struggles to get off of blocks, and I think the play strength is a big reason for that. And I do think he overextended a lot on run plays. I thought there were times where his eyes were overly aggressive. He tried to bite downhill a little bit too much, and the ball ended up going out right around him. His ability to cover, his athleticism, his range, all are traits that you love. He is a little bit older compared to some of these other guys, but I think he's a really good player, a guy that is going to make an NFL team very happy. I think he could be a starting linebacker for you right out the gate, and he's my number 10 guy. So I love this guy, and I've got Bocher at number 10. At number 9 on my list, I've got Torian Perkins out of Ole Miss. I'm not going to spend a ton of time on him. One of the more difficult evaluations, because this is a guy that he's listed as a linebacker. He played a lot of his snaps, though, off the edge. This is a guy that was more of attached to the line of scrimmage, played that wide formation, and let's just get after the quarterback. They used him as a blitzing threat. They used him as that downhill weapon, and they can do that because he is probably the best athlete in this draft. I think this is a legitimate 4.5 speed guy. I think he's a phenomenal blitzer, phenomenal pass rusher. I mean, a guy that was consistently in the backfield all year for Ole Miss. They didn't drop him back into coverage a ton, but when they did, you saw some solid coverage feel. You saw the potential there where he could turn his hips, he could stick with defenders, he's got the speed, the quickness, the bend, it's all there, but he is a guy that missed a lot of tackles, and I worry about what his size is going to mean for him at the next level. He's 210 pounds. So he's not an edge rusher because that's not going to work, but he's still very small for a modern linebacker. I don't really know what his role is going to look like at the next level. I have him at 9 because I'm betting on the athleticism, because he is a rare athlete with phenomenal bend, phenomenal pass rushing traits. If you can use him as like a weak side linebacker, as a blitzer in that role, maybe as a 3-4 outside linebacker, there's some potential there, but I do have questions on what his overall fit's going to look like. Again, this is more a bet on athleticism, but I've got him at number 9. At number 8 in this class, I have Railen Wilson out of Georgia. Georgia produces linebackers like nobody's business. It's every other year. There's 2 or 3 linebackers. You saw it with Smile Mondon last year, Jalen Walker. You had Nakobe Dean relatively recently. They've got 2 in this year's class that I think are going to get drafted. Railen Wilson is the first of the 2. Just didn't play as much as I would have loved to have seen. A guy that, let me see if I can pull up his exact snap counts here. A guy that played 420 snaps last year for Georgia. So he did not play. I want to see a little bit more from him before I put him any higher on this list, but good range athletically. Moves well side to side. I think he's got good speed. He showed the ability to be a blitzing presence from that middle linebacker spot. But I also liked the ability to match up one-on-one in coverage. He did a really good job in the Texas game against the tight ends, picking them up, making plays in coverage. I thought he had good feel. I just think as a run defender, he has a lot of work to do. And that's kind of the area why I have him at number 8. Because I like the coverage that I see. I like the tackling. I think it's overall pretty good. And I think he's a good blitzing threat. He really needs to work on his run defense because he was flushed out of run plays way too often. There were times where blockers got his hands on him and they could pretty much dictate where he was going to go on the play. Really struggled to get off of blocks, and he overextended a lot in the run game. Missed a lot of easy reads that should have been there where he just hit the wrong gap and ended up allowing a big play. I think his gap discipline is going to need to improve, and I also think his play strength is going to need to improve. He is 6'1", 235. I like his game. I think he's a guy that can get into my top 5 by the end of the year because of the traits, because of the athleticism. There's a lot there. Let's see a little bit more consistency and more of a full-time starter role, but I did definitely like what I saw. I've got Railen Wilson at number 8. At number 7 in this draft class, so I'm going to have Deontay Lawson. I've seen him pretty high on a lot of boards. I don't really know what to make of him. I didn't love him last year, and this past season, I also just wasn't necessarily the biggest fan of him, and Look, he's got great size. He's 6'2", 239 pounds. He's a really strong tackler, wraps up well. He has fluid hips. I think he's sound in coverage, plays physical at the line of scrimmage, shows some punch against some good tight ends. The explosiveness and downhill presence is good, but I just don't think he's got great speed. He's explosive, he's not fast, and that does concern me a little bit. There were a lot of times where he just felt out of control, ended up on the ground, was bullied around by blockers as a result, ended up on the ground and on his butt way more often than you wanted to see. And a guy that just had some injury questions last year, ended up missing some portion of the last couple of years due to injury. I don't really know what to make of Deontay Lawson. The size, the length, it's there. I like the coverage. I like the tackling. I like the run defense. I like all the things. I just have some hesitation to put him any higher than this due to the lack of what I would say is elite speed. And I just don't think he's got good play strength. I don't think he's a great run, like a great block shedder. And that does worry me a little bit, especially at this position where that is so important. There are a lot of things to like. I just like some of the other things with some of these guys a little bit better. Had a good year. Only missed 12% of his tackles, but I do have Deontay Lawson at number 7. At number 6 in this class, I've got Drake Bowen, one of the last guys that I watched of the linebacker position. Thoroughly impressed. 6'2", 238 pounds. Borderline elite tackler. 5.7% missed tackle rate is a fantastic number. This guy's got range athletically, but is one of the smartest football players you're going to get in this class. Notre Dame, you saw it with Jack Kaiser, you saw it with J.D. Bertrand. They just produce smart, heady linebackers that are going to make good plays, they're going to tackle, and they're going to cover. That's what Drake Bowen is to a T, except he's younger than those guys were, and I think he is a better athlete than those guys were. I think this is a guy that could get drafted in the second round next year. The run defense, really impressive. Obviously, he can tackle, but he's really disciplined, understands his assignments. He plays well within his run keys, and he's got the quickness to trigger. They didn't use it much as a blitzer, so I'd like to see him get after the quarterback a little bit more, maybe use him a little bit more in a weak side role. The one thing that I think is holding him back, he did struggle to consistently get off of blocks, make some plays in the backfield. I think he has the traits, though. He is a powerful player. He's got great play strength, great range athletically. I'm not seeing a lot of Drake Bowen love in this class. I think he is a borderline top 5 linebacker and a guy that can make an NFL team very, very happy. I think he's a great linebacker. I've got him at number 6. At number 5 in this class, I've got Austin Romaine out of Kansas State. Kansas State's a sneaky one. They're a team that I think could make some noise this season. He is the highest graded linebacker in this video. Had a 90.8 defense grade per PFF last year. One of the top grades in the nation. 75 tackles this past season, 22 pressures, 2 sacks. I mean, his trigger is quick and he gets downhill in a flash. I love that about him. He is a really good blitzing threat. He's a really solid run defender, and it all stems back to his ability to come downhill and trigger. I think he's one of the better athletes in this class. I also think he's got great size. He's 6'2", 240 pounds. One of the biggest linebackers in this entire draft class, which is saying something. He is a pretty smart and decisive coverage player. He doesn't bite on double moves, and he showed the ability and the speed to stick with really fast players out of the backfield. I really liked that. Again, block shedding's up and down, but his tackling was what held him back. Nearly a 20% missed tackle rate. Now, a guy that had to do a lot for the Kansas State defense last year, he still had 54 run stops, missed nearly 20% of his tackles. I think Austin Romaine can be a really good player. I think the athleticism there has to improve as a tackler. That's the one area where I'm like, that's holding him back from the top 5. But I do think he has a lot that I love in his game. And I think he moves well. So, yeah, I'm a big fan of Austin Romaine. I've got him as my number 5 linebacker. But entering the top 4, at number 4, I've got Sonny Styles at Ohio State, a guy that I've loved for the last 2 years. I thought he was a safety, then he converted to linebacker last year, and there are still ups and downs in his game. I don't love some of his coverage stuff, which is strange because for a guy that used to be a safety, you would expect to see a little bit more in coverage. It was pretty average at times. I thought that he had some fluidity concerns, not the greatest change of direction, but one, I think he's got freakish size, 6'4", 235, long arms, tons of versatility. You can line him up anywhere on your defense. I think he's going to be able to make a play. He's a great blitzer. The timing that he plays with is phenomenal. He's a great run defender, still relatively young, which I think is playing in his favor. He had his growing pains at the linebacker position. I think he struggled at some of the run key stuff. I think he struggled at times in coverage, but I still think he has everything you want in a modern linebacker. The length, the athleticism. I think he's got good tackling technique. Needs more consistency as a tackler, but I think the technique is pretty sound. There's a lot to love about Sonny Styles. I think he's kind of being underrated in what is a great linebacker class. And he's going to have the field to himself this year. Cody Simon is gone. Tommy Eichenberg obviously went to the Raiders last year. He's going to step up, I think, for this Ohio State team. And I think he's in for a breakout year for the Buckeyes. So I've got Sonny Styles as my number 4 linebacker in the class. Now, my number 3 linebacker is CJ Allen. I've got a first to a second round grade on Allen, however. All 3 of my top linebackers, I have first round grades on. I think this linebacker class is phenomenal. And CJ Allen, I think, is right there. Really interesting player. Because I think he is a guy that gets off of blocks well. I think he's an excellent tackler. One of the best in this class. A 6% missed tackle rate. Phenomenal number. 6'1", 235. He fills run gaps really well. He's got good range athletically. Great size. Great length. Really good tackler. Like I said, he doesn't miss a lot of tackles. He plays disciplined in the run game. He can cover in one-on-one. The reason I still have my hesitations with him, his lower half at times feels really tight. I feel like his change of direction is not as fluid as it could be. And because of that, I think he struggled in coverage at times. I think there were some missed coverage assignments. Now, he has the athleticism and speed to stick with guys down the field, but does he have the change of direction? If a guy is running a quick crosser, does he have the ability to stick with them in one-on-ones? That I needed to see a little bit more of. But CJ Allen's a guy that's been drawing Roquan Smith comparisons. And this is my number 3 linebacker in the class. I don't necessarily see the type of range with Allen as some other people, but if you're looking for a modern linebacker that could do a little bit of everything, I think CJ Allen is an awesome player that is going to fill a lot of roles at the next level. My number 2 linebacker is Torian York from Texas A&M, and I wanted to put him at number 1 so badly. I think Torian York is fantastic. Torian York, in my opinion, could have been the number 1 linebacker in each of the last 2 drafts. He has been phenomenal for A&M. Again, don't go to the stats and the pure box score numbers, because what York was doing on a weekly basis isn't going to show up on the box score. He is just a really high floor run defender. He brings a great blitzing presence, and he elevates the floor of your run defense. He's so quick to trigger downhill. His instincts in run defense are phenomenal. He snuffed some outside zone runs out better than some NFL guys can do, quite frankly. Incredibly reliable tackler. A guy that he wraps up at a very efficient level, and he knows how to, finish the play. I love that about him. And we'll get into one of his weaknesses here. He's got shorter arms. And usually when you have a guy with shorter arms, you worry about his ability to tackle. Can he wrap up consistently? That wasn't an issue for Torian York. He was a fantastic tackler. His change of direction and his ability to stick in one-on-one coverage is fantastic. He is a really, really smart player with instincts, with production as a tackler and as a run defender, but he is a little undersized. He's 6 foot 235. He's got shorter arms. Because of that, he struggled at times to get off of blocks, and he got easily flushed out of plays. I think he needs to improve his base in his lower half, not be so easily flushed out in the run game. If he can do that, I think he's the top linebacker in this draft. I think he might be the most talented guy in the class. I think his size and lack of length will hurt him a little bit, and so I've got him at number 2. But I still think York is an awesome player that is going to be a really good NFL linebacker. I have a first-round grade on him. But my number 1 guy is Anthony Hill Jr. out of Texas. I just, for one thing, I think he just has a better size profile than Torian York. He's 6'3", 235. Another guy that has great change of direction, great athleticism, smart in coverage, who reads his assignments really well. He's great in man-to-man, tackles really well. He's got good technique as a tackler, which you'll love to see. I think he's a really smart player overall. There are just a couple of things that you would like to see potentially get better for him, which I think he's going to be able to do. For one thing, being more consistent in the run game, there were just some questionable moments in terms of effort from him that I did worry about. I was like, okay, well, he's not really trying as hard as you want to see on run defense. Still had 44 run stops, great number there. And I also thought he could get better at getting off of blocks, as could most of the guys in this class, but it was pretty noticeable at times for Anthony Hill where he just didn't have consistent play strength. He's a great linebacker. I loved his tape. I talked about it in my Texas deep dive. I think he's going to be one of the best players in the country. I think he's going to be an All-American. Him and Torian York are going to be battling out for that linebacker 1 spot this year, and I'm going to be very interested to see who could take that spot. But that's going to do it for me in this video, guys. Let me know, who are your top linebackers in the class? Who did I miss? Who would you have liked to see included? Some honorable mentions here late in the video. We talked about Rasheem Biles, the other Pitt linebacker. I think he just missed it. A little bit more undersized even than his teammate, Kyle Lewis. I just thought he was a little grabby, and I have more questions about his athleticism than most. I really like Eric Gentry at USC. Want to see him be fully healthy and get some more reps, but I think he's a really good player. I like Lander Barton. I thought his coverage was phenomenal. I still have my eyes on Jason Henderson at Old Dominion, still a little undersized, redshirted last year due to an injury, but definitely a name to monitor. I think his tackling is some of the best in the country. And another guy I'll talk about is Jyshawn Barham. I had him really high on my linebacker rankings last year. Not really sure what happened, but his athleticism really worries me. I think he's probably going to be a late day 3 pick at this point, but would love to hear from you guys. Leave a like, subscribe if you are new, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Adios.